This account was sent by an anonymous author. For obvious reasons, he prefers to remain unidentified. To ensure his anonymity, he created an email with a name full of codes, specifically intended for sending this testimony. He wishes to share his experience, especially with those who are considering the possibility of making a pact with the devil. Those who believe that the devil is a terrifying entity with a grotesque appearance are mistaken. On the 3 occasions he encountered him, he had the misleading impression of dealing with extremely polite, cultured, elegant, and attractive people. Coming from a humble family, he had always dreamed of becoming rich and attaining fortune. He recounts that at 18, if you are neither handsome nor wealthy, your opportunities with women become even scarcer. Driven by the ambition to become a relevant and wealthy person, he decided to make a pact with the devil at the age of 19. Unlike what many believe, he did not turn to a book or a priest to make the pact. On a certain night, at midnight, he gathered his courage and went to a crossroads in the middle of a sugarcane field. There he called upon Satan, invoking him 3 times. He waited, but nothing happened. He repeated the call, but still received no response. He called a 3rd time and then 3 more times, all without success. Discouraged, he turned his back and left. 3 days later, he went to a well-known bar in his city with some new friends. As they talked and drank beer, a luxury sedan parked right in front of their table. From inside the vehicle, a man who appeared to be around 30 years old stepped out, very attractive, well-dressed, resembling a typical gangster from Al Capone-era films. The man had blonde hair, blue eyes, and exuded great politeness. He sat at the table next to them and spent the entire night drinking whiskey before eventually saying his goodbyes and leaving. The next day, he started working as an assistant in a battery factory. Early in the morning, the same man he had seen the night before entered the department where he was and walked toward him. His gaze was so intense that it almost put him into a trance. The attractive man approached and spoke. "Hello, Mark. We have heard your plea." He was confused, unable to understand. "Plea? Who is we?" To his surprise, the man smiled, placed his hands on his shoulders, and whispered near his ear, "We will be waiting for you at 6 o'clock. After that, he walked away. The rest of the day was spent trying to decipher the meaning of it all. He asked his colleagues if they knew the man, but no one recalled seeing him there, let alone talking to him. That's when the idea occurred to him. What if that man was actually the devil? He always left work at 5:45 p.m. On his way to the bus stop, the same luxury car pulled up beside him. The back door opened, and when he looked inside the car, he recognized the same man from the night before. No one around seemed to know him or had seen him before, yet there he was. The man checked his watch. It was exactly 6 p.m., the agreed-upon time. At that moment, a whirlwind of fear, uncertainty, and curiosity overtook him. Drawn by the offer, he decided to get into the car. Inside the vehicle, an oppressive silence filled the air. After a few tense minutes, he finally found the courage to ask about the man's identity and his intentions. The response left him terrified. "We are many. We want you to join us." "But how could I join you?" The man replied, "This body is merely an intermediary between us and you, for we are a legion. My brothers and I wish for you to serve alongside us under our beloved master, Lucifer. In exchange, you will receive all the riches and enjoy all the pleasures of the earth while you live." At that moment, he was completely paralyzed. He had desired to make a pact in exchange for money, wealth, and women, but upon realizing that it could actually happen, fear consumed him. He was one step away from bargaining his soul with a legion of demons. Overcome by fear, he questioned the man. "And what about God? If you exist, then God must exist too. What will happen to me before him? If I give you my soul, when I die, will I truly go to hell and suffer for eternity?" The man stared at him with a sarcastic smile, as if amused by the young man's naivety. He laughed, thinking he had made a joke, but the man, with a serious expression, replied, "Mark, whom do you refer to as God? The great adversary of our dear master Lucifer?" After a brief pause, he continued, "Stay calm and relax, for this is nothing more than a grand chess game. Lucifer, the great architect, desires only good, happiness, and pleasure for humanity. The true enemy, the other God, is the one who truly embodies evil. He uses tragedies and suffering as a strategy to attract followers. He was capable of sacrificing his own son and still demands sacrifices from his faithful. The concept of eternal fire and hell is just another tactic to intimidate his opponents and enemies. Speechless, Mark looked at the man again and asked, "What should I do?" The man merely smiled as he handed him a black briefcase, the kind executives often carry, decorated with golden details. "Enjoy this week, but open the briefcase only when you get home," he instructed. Mark followed the instruction. Exiting the car with the briefcase in hand, he was eager to discover what was inside. As soon as he finally arrived home, he barely had time to step inside before he started opening it. To his surprise, the briefcase was filled with money. Along with it, there was a large envelope. Inside, a thick, textured brownish paper emitted a peculiar odor, somewhat similar to rotten meat, though not strong, just noticeable up close. At that time, compared to current values, the amount in the briefcase was roughly 500,000 reis. Mark, at just 19 years old, took an unexpected action. He tossed the envelope aside, stored it, and took the money. That very night, he decided to go to a nightclub. Feeling like a true magnate, he spent without hesitation. He went out with friends, drank, danced, and later visited a strip club where they stayed until dawn. The party was in full swing, sex, drinks, and plenty of women. A few days later, Mark already had a new car, a new house, and was enjoying a luxurious lifestyle. He felt as if he had made a pact with the devil, eagerly awaiting more achievements. However, to his surprise, the pact had yet to be sealed. One night, around midnight, while watching TV in the dark, he suddenly saw a figure standing. It was a woman standing at his bedroom door. The only thing he could make out was her silhouette, illuminated by the television's glow. The shock was so intense that he almost had a heart attack. He trembled with fear, caught off guard by someone who had appeared out of nowhere like a specter. Gathering his courage, he turned on the light, and upon looking at the woman, he realized she was extraordinarily beautiful, smiling, and very attractive. Feeling calmer, he asked, "Who are you?" She smiled and answered with a sweet and captivating voice, "I am responsible for your contract. You can call me Inclusa." The name sounded peculiar to him, but he did not dare to question it. After all, her beauty and allure were undeniable. Then she asked him to bring the envelope, the paper with the unpleasant odor that had come with the money. Without hesitation, he went to the place where he had stored it and handed it to her. She took it, placed it on the nightstand beside the bed, and began approaching him. She was tall, with very pale skin, straight dark hair, almost black. Her eyes were also black, and her waist was breathtaking. She exuded an irresistible perfume. Her legs were well-defined and firm. She wore a long red evening gown that radiated elegance and sophistication, adorned with shimmering details. She drew closer to him and began kissing him. He, almost in a trance, was overcome with an inexplicable desire. At the same time, he felt a slight apprehension, as this woman had appeared out of nowhere in his room. Nevertheless, he surrendered to the moment and let himself be carried away by the seduction. Later, he would say they experienced things he had never imagined possible in bed. He felt indescribable sensations. That night was marked by the most incredible sex and the most intense orgasm of his life. The Kama Sutra was explored without limits. They spent the entire night together, and the next morning around 6 o'clock, he was awakened by the persistent ringing of the phone. As he got up to answer, he noticed that the woman was already up, stunning and ready. What stood out was that her clothes were entirely different from those she had worn the night before. Intrigued, he looked around for the red evening gown but couldn't find it. He wondered where she had gotten those new clothes, but without saying a word, she simply looked at him and commented, "Aren't you going to answer the door?" He walked over to the door to find out who was ringing the intercom so early. Upon opening it, he found himself face to face with an exceptionally tall man, standing about 2 meters high and appearing to be around 20 years old. He was impeccably dressed. Without any formality, the stranger entered the house and made himself comfortable on the sofa, as if he belonged there. There was so much to process that the host could barely formulate questions. He simply observed, trying to understand what was happening. Then the young woman who had been in the bedroom approached him, took his right hand and began sucking on his index finger. At first, he found the situation intriguing, until he shifted his gaze to the floor and saw something terrifying. Her feet were unusual, seemingly made of gold and shaped like horse hooves. Overcome with fear, he tried to pull away, but he wasn't quick enough. The woman bit his finger forcefully, causing a deep cut. Blood began to gush out. It was at that moment that he noticed her teeth had changed. They were now razor-sharp, like a shark's. She took his blood and used it to draw an inverted cross on his chest, to the left, near his heart, which was pounding uncontrollably. The man sitting on the sofa stood up and handed him a piece of paper with a peculiar odor, demanding that he write a few words using his own blood. The text began with, "I, Mark so-and-so, renounce God and swear allegiance to Lucifer." He hesitated. Deep down, he knew he was about to cross an irreversible line. But a voice echoed in his mind, telling him that without this, he would never have luxury, women, or comfort. The temptation was irresistible. He succumbed. As he signed, he felt a weight on his heart. He realized that, at that moment, he had sealed a pact with the devil. The enigmatic man walked out the door, and he began searching for the young woman. However, she had disappeared, as if she had evaporated into thin air, leaving no trace behind. That was when everything became clear. The man who had been in his house was none other than Satan himself. Days passed, and his life seemed to continue as normal. However, about 40 days after the pact, he received a phone call from a multinational company, summoning him to a meeting. The tone of the call made it clear that this was in his best interest and that his presence was essential. They informed him that it was about a recent agreement and that he needed to be there. Aware of his choice, he understood the message and headed to the company. Upon arrival, he was warmly greeted by the receptionist, who escorted him to the meeting room. Inside, there was a vast oval table, surrounded by approximately 20 chairs. Every seat was occupied by a man, except for one which had been left vacant for him. All those men called him by name as if they were longtime friends, even though he had never met any of them before. Now, pay attention because this might be significant. The man seated at the head of the table stood up and declared, "Mark Carter, you are now part of our family, and here we look out for each other." After sitting back down, the young man asked what was happening, trying to understand the situation he was in. He felt completely lost. Then, after a long conversation, it was revealed that the multinational company was actually a front, a cover that allowed them to gather whenever they wanted. They informed him that the company was one of the most powerful in the world and that he was now part of it. Amidst so much information about a world he had never imagined existed, he felt completely out of place. Despite this, everyone was very courteous and handed him a bank card already registered in his name. Along with the card, he received a bank statement showing a balance of 5 million reis. Not fully understanding, he asked, "Is this money the compensation for the pact I made a few days ago?" They all looked at him with calm expressions and confirmed, adding that this was only the beginning. That same day, he was appointed as a company director and invited to join a Masonic lodge. In the following days, he was introduced to influential politicians and renowned businessmen, as well as starting to attend high society parties. He met various celebrities who, like him, had also made the pact. His salary was astonishing. He acquired a beautiful home, a luxury car, and began flaunting everything he desired. Luxury became a constant in his life, and he was deeply immersed in this sophisticated world. It was in this setting that he met a famous actress. He chooses not to reveal her name, and I must admit, that piques my curiosity. Their relationship began to blossom and soon turned into a romance. To preserve their privacy, they kept the affair away from the media spotlight. One day he was invited to a party in London. Upon arrival, they were taken to an isolated area of the city, where a medieval-style mansion stood, reminiscent of those seen in the movies. This scene reminded me of the club from Eyes Wide Shut. Upon entering the location, they were given black masks and instructed to remove all their clothing before walking down a corridor that led to an underground hall. There was never any talk about the events of these meetings or rituals. However, his curiosity was stronger. Driven by the desire to discover what really happened there, he decided to find out what was going on. Upon entering the hall, he found an atmosphere of extreme opulence and refinement. At the heart of the space there was a round-shaped bed. Above it stood a woman wrapped in black fabric from the waist up, completely bare from the waist down. Her arms were tied to a metal structure that also held the mantle partially covering her body. The room was bathed in a strong red light, reminiscent of motels or nightclubs. Her face was hidden behind a mask that concealed her features. Around the bed, 5 robust, muscular, and naked men stood ready for what was to come. As soon as they noticed the new participant's arrival, they turned their eyes toward him and began to act. He, paralyzed, could only watch the scene. Soon he was invited to join the activity. He felt a mixture of shame and intense excitement and decided to participate. He stepped into the situation. All those men took turns with the woman, and when his turn came, they removed the sheet covering the girl and untied her arms. He was stunned by the revelation. The stunning and seductive woman on the bed was the actress he was involved with. He froze. Then the young woman approached him, kissed him, and whispered in his ear, "You're not the only one with little secrets." In this context, the orgy was in full swing. One was involved, another joined in, one on top, another below, on the side, in the ear, in the mouth, in the nose, and even on top of the piano. Just the way the devil likes it, if you'll allow the joke. The night went on like this. He stated that he was sharing all these details so that people could understand how they exert control over others in the world. It was evident that the relationship ended after that. She was a bit too promiscuous for Mark, but he had no reason to complain. He led a comfortable life, had everything he wanted. His existence was filled with sex, luxury, and influence. And when he spoke of power, he truly meant having an impact, voicing opinions, and interfering in important decisions, both political and economic, whose repercussions severely affected American society. He had ties with congressmen, senators, and even presidents of that time. Years later, at 22, exhausted from the parties and the loneliness brought on by the superficiality of people obsessed with money, he met a young woman, a girl from a respectable family full of principles, very different from the people in his social circle. He fell in love, got married, and had 2 children. However, he led a secret life. She was a woman of faith while he followed Satanism. What he hid from his wife was the true nature of his life. He met Ashley at 22. They dated for 7 years until, at 29, they got married. She had always dreamed of becoming a mother but struggled to conceive. Only after 11 years of marriage did she manage to have her first child. 2 years later, the second one came. When the youngest turned 2, he received a visit from one of the leaders of the organization he belonged to. This man brought terrifying news. He was obligated to sacrifice his own child in veneration of the devil, believing that he needed to demonstrate his love for the great master. If he refused, he would face severe consequences. At that moment, he realized just how evil and terrifying the people he was associated with were. Although he had previously participated in satanic rituals, he had never imagined he would bring a child, let alone his own son, to such a fate. Under intense psychological pressure but struggling against it, he felt that those 2 children had awakened something new within him. He could not turn against his own sons. That was when he decided to reveal everything to his wife. Her reaction was one of the worst. However, being an extremely religious and charitable woman, she chose not to leave him. Instead, she stated that if he sincerely repented, he would be free from all pacts. He did not hesitate. He broke the pact with the devil, abandoned his life of sin, and began walking a new path. He started attending church with his wife. After 3 weeks of attending church, he began acts of charity with the money he had obtained illicitly, believing that this would offer him protection. This feeling lasted until he received the tragic news of his wife's kidnapping. Days dragged on, but no information emerged. 2 weeks later, the terrifying confirmation: her body had been found. According to forensic reports, she had been dismembered and used in a satanic ritual, the very same kind he was already familiar with. He experienced the pain that, not too long ago, he had inflicted on other families. Fearing that something might happen to his children, he sought support from various churches without success. From that moment on, he began receiving daily visits from demons in his home, manifesting as black shadows capable of freezing the soul. He had barely recovered from the loss of his wife when both of his children fell ill, forcing him to take them to the doctor. During his journey, a tragic car accident caused the death of his 2 children and left him paralyzed from the waist down. He suffered a spinal fracture, resulting in the loss of movement in his legs and the need for a wheelchair. He now lives in that chair, deeply mourning the loss of his beloved wife and carrying a heavy burden of guilt for his children's deaths. Beyond all this suffering, he faces the daily torment of demons that feed his desire to die. He watched his finances crumble, and in his ears, he hears demonic whispers saying, "You have experienced everything we promised: wealth, pleasures, power. Now it's time for us to collect our share, and we are waiting for the moment to come and take you." The priests heard his story, and believe it or not, this man only sought to recount what he had been through. He felt the need to somehow vent and share his experience anonymously with various people, to convey the message that it is not worth it. It doesn't pay off. This man may have a vivid imagination and could even write a book if all of this were just an invention. But what if it's real? He confirmed it. He didn't want to reveal his name or provide further details. He created an email solely to share this story, wishing to remain anonymous for obvious reasons. According to him, the subject involves American politics, Satanism, artists, and businessmen. While analyzing the account, I remembered a movie, Eyes Wide Shut. It's a production that deals with issues that may have some truth to them. Some say that shortly after completing the film, before its release, Stanley Kubrick died unexpectedly. Did he reveal too much? Here's a suggestion. If you haven't watched Eyes Wide Shut yet, it's worth checking out. You will understand what I'm trying to say. Another suggestion: do some research on the Hellfire Club in London. Whenever I encounter the image of the devil in this story, I recall Christian Grey from 50 Shades of Grey, even though I've never read the book or seen the movie. The truth is that I have no doubts about anything. We are facing a continuous battle between good and evil. The devil, who reigns over this world, is the father of falsehood. He presents multiple truths so that you may be seduced by a single lie. While he relies on fleeting pleasures and carnal desires, God guides us towards spiritual evolution and detachment from material possessions. It is not possible to enjoy both sides. If you give yourself too much to the flesh, the spirit drifts away. On the other hand, if you cultivate the spirit excessively, the body becomes less significant. Many people seek a middle ground, but some choose to lean toward one of the extremes. In light of this, some choose to renounce certain pleasures, such as the celibacy of priests, or avoid vanity, like monks who shave their heads. All of this is done in pursuit of spiritual growth. And the devil? He takes advantage of sex, money, vices, and the illusion of power to lead individuals away from the true path. Just look at the music industry. Everything is sexualized, everything revolves around it. With all this in mind, I leave you with one final recommendation. Today's book could be none other than this: the Holy Scriptures. No, there is no need to go shopping. You probably already have one at home. This collection contains various books filled with wisdom. I recommend reading Psalm 90.